There is a realm beyond that known to most technicians, an environment that appears unreal, and yet is as real as any backroom repair shop. It's a place where research is tested and proven, where knowledge is transformed into action, and procedures are put into practice. It lies between the summit of a technician's potential and the reality of his current ability. It's a place that might be called the Tech Zone. You're looking at a Mr. Eddie Smith, an industrious motorcycle technician, a man with the diversity of skill and talent necessary to perform a variety of intricate repairs. But there are some areas of expertise where Eddie lacks confidence. The valve job is one of these areas. And whether it comes through troubleshooting or a customer who almost did it himself, valve work is one job Eddie feels is too delicate and critical to be done in the service shop. However, Eddie Smith is about to have a change of heart. He's about to take a brief but very prosperous journey into Honda's Tech Zone.
Yeah, Joe's Machine Shop. How you doing? Yeah, this is Eddie. Look, is Joe there? Oh, he's not. When do you expect him back? Tuesday? Well, yeah, it is. You see, I just promised one of my customers that I'd have his bike for him by Tuesday afternoon. No, I understand. Listen, please, if Joe gets back any sooner than that, would you please have him give me a call right away? Yeah, just tell him it concerns a couple of valve jobs. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye. Oh, man. And I used to think this subletting work was a piece of cake. It's getting to be a real hassle. You're right, Eddie. It is a hassle. It's pretty unprofitable, too. Oh, man. This pressure must be getting to me. I'm starting to talk to myself. Or it's I'm hearing things. Come on, Eddie. Get a hold of yourself. You're not hearing things. But every time you sublet valve work, you're not only missing a terrific opportunity to make money, but your shop is limiting its control of quality and maybe customer satisfaction as well. Look, why are you taking these chances? You could do the job yourself. Oh, yeah. What makes you so sure? Because I know you, and I know what you're capable of. Listen, pal, just who are you anyway? Well, I'm you. You might call me your alter ego. Right. Okay, look, I'm not sure I believe all this, but let's get one thing straight. The only reason we don't do valve work is because we always send it out. And besides, it's just too much of a hassle, and, well, I'm just really not sure how to do it. Well, that can change, Eddie. Believe me, I've got faith in you. Or should I say us. Now look, why don't you come along with me and let me give you a few pointers. Are you willing to do that? Yeah. Can't hurt. Where are we going? Oh, wow. Where are we? Don't worry, Eddie. You won't be here for long. But by the time you leave, you'll be able to master valve work on any of Honda's four-strokes. You'll be able to diagnose the need for a valve job. And with reference to the shop manual, you'll be able to identify valve guide replacement and seat refacing procedures. You know, Eddie, diagnosing valve trouble is really pretty easy. There are three basic types: a problem with the valve seats, the valve guides, or the valves themselves. Most likely, the bike with a bad seal at the valve seat will be hard starting, idle poorly, or have low power. And if the valve guides are worn, the bike will probably be burning a lot of oil. Check to see if there's excessive smoke on deceleration. Worn guides will also create some top-end noise. Now, what's the first thing you'd do if you diagnosed any of these symptoms, Eddie? Well, first I'd check for low compression. That would confirm either a
piston ring or a valve problem.
Right, but don't assume the worst. Remember, your customer would rather pay for a little extra diagnostic time than a valve job that may not be necessary. So before you get too involved, make sure the valve clearance and cam timing are correct. And be sure to check the shop manual for the proper cam positioning. If there is too little valve clearance, the valves will not close fully, and compression will leak past. This gives the same symptoms as burnt valves. If compression is low, the piston rings may be worn. And if compression is low in adjacent cylinders, the head gasket may be leaking. Now, unless you're working on a basket case, you'll want to isolate the leakage point before tearing down the head.
That means performing a leak down test, right?
Right. Now, why don't you show me how you do that?
Okay, but I'm gonna need a leak down gauge and a spark plug hole adapter. Thanks. Well, for openers, remove all the spark plugs. Then, position one piston at a time at top dead center on the compression stroke.
Right. And be sure to remove any wrenches from the crankshaft. You can also shift the transmission into gear to lock the drivetrain.
Once you apply air pressure to the gauge, adjust the regulator to 0 on the outer scale. Record the reading for each cylinder. Cylinder leak down should not exceed 12%. On many bikes, you can listen at the flywheel. On others, at the dipstick hole. Air leaking here is probably due to worn rings. You also check the adjacent spark plug holes. Any air escaping here is probably getting past the leaking gasket. And if air is being lost at the intake or the exhaust port, bad valves are the problem.
You've got it. Now, the next step is to remove the cylinder head. I'll tell you what, Eddie. Why don't you step over to the bench and run through the procedure as I describe it? First, carefully clean carbon deposits from the combustion chamber using a soft wire brush before removing any valves to keep carbon bits out of the ports. Disassemble the head according to the shop manual. Then, look closely for cracks in the areas around the spark plug holes and the valve seats. Check the head for warpage. And remember, replace, don't resurface a damaged or out-of-spec head. You'd be raising the compression ratio and maybe voiding the emissions warranty. Now you want to inspect the valve train components. Measure and examine these parts and compare to service limits listed in the shop manual. Then replace as necessary. That's right, Eddie. Clean the intake and exhaust valves thoroughly to remove carbon deposits so you can visually inspect each valve. Check for scoring, galling, or other stem damage. And make sure the valve face isn't pitted or cupped. If there's any such damage, the valve should be replaced. You also need to check the valve stem for wear and tear. Next, check the valve head for warp or wobble. A warped valve head may be caused by excessive temperatures in the combustion chamber, while over-revving may cause bent valves. You know, Eddie, it's not always necessary to check wobble with a V-block and dial indicator setup. Sometimes, all you need to do is watch it spin in a drill motor. Although you've probably ground damaged valves before, remember that Honda valves have thin stellite faces and ends. You'll have to replace any that are damaged or worn, because grinding will cause rapid deterioration of the valve. Okay, Eddie. Now, any idea what your next step is?
I think I got a pretty good idea. You use a reamer to remove carbon from the old guides so you can get an accurate reading. Then, you measure stem to guide clearance against the shop manual specs.
That's right. And if valve guide clearance is over service limits, your next step is to replace the valve guides. To do this, you'll need the proper reamer, driver, and a nylon brush, like the ones you use to clean rifles. You'll also need this adjustable valve guide driver to spread the driving load between the end of the guide and the guide stop. Before removing the old guides, be sure to note the difference between guide tips. The intake may be a different length and shape from the exhaust. And there are 3 basic guide types. Some have a built-in locating stop, others have a separate clip, and some have no stop or clip. On guides with no stops, measure the old guide's installed height and record it for use later on. If you're using the adjustable driver, set it to the height you've recorded, or reference the shop manual specification. Now here's a tip to ease guide installation. Put the new guides in a freezer or on dry ice for 5 to 10 minutes. This will shrink them a bit for easy installation. When using dry ice, be sure you don't touch the ice or the cold parts with your bare hands. Wear gloves from the time you put the parts on the ice until after they are installed and have reached room temperature. The next step is to heat the cylinder head to about 212 degrees Fahrenheit. You can use an oven if it's available, or a hot plate like this works just fine. To measure temperature, you can use a thermometer or a welding supplied temp stick. Don't try to use a torch for heating. The head could warp or get too hot. Eddie, bring the cylinder head and put it on these wood blocks.
Why not just put it on the bench?
Well, using blocks on the floor allows you more freedom to position yourself so you can drive from the proper angle. Drive out the old guides from the combustion chamber side, using the driver specified in the shop manual or tool catalog. Now, while the cylinder head is still hot, drive cold new guides in from the rocker arm side. Remember, guides are easily bent into a banana shape, so be careful. That's right, Eddie. Hammer overhand from the opposing side to keep the guides vertical. Keep driving, non-stop for 10 to 15 hits, till you hear it seat. Remember, some guides have inner valve spring seats. Take care not to break them during replacement, and check for cracks after the guides are installed.
So now we're ready to ream the new guides, right?
Right. And while you're waiting for the cylinder head to cool, inspect your reamers for chips or nicks. They should be stored separately in their case or in a piece of fuel line. This helps keep them sharp. If the reamer is dull, it'll squeak. Don't use it. Reamer sizes vary by as little as 0.02 of a millimeter, so be sure to use the one specified in the shop manual. Using one that's too small can cause seized valves. Using one that's too large will ruin your valve job. Keep cutting oil flowing to remove debris. Rotate the reamer clockwise only and turn it all the way through. Then, keep turning the reamer clockwise as you remove it. If the reamer feels notchy or has hard spots, the guide is probably bent and you'll have to install a new one. After you've reamed all the guides, clean them with a nylon brush with soap and water. After you've cleaned the guides, oil them right away to prevent corrosion. That takes care of your new guide installation. You feel like you got it down?
Sure. That's not difficult at all. You just got to remember to keep the cylinder head hot and the guides cold. You've got to keep the guides vertical and hammer a steady 10 to 15 hits till you hear it seat. Then you use a reamer, the one specified in the shop manual, and you turn it clockwise all the way through. Next, you clean and oil the guides. Then you're ready to start refacing the valve seats.
Anytime valve guides are replaced, you must reface or cut the valve seats. Refacing is also necessary if the seat is too wide, too rough, or has low spots.
Well, what kind of cutting tool do you recommend for that?
These new wave valve seat cutters, or an equivalent, are easy to use. And once you've made the initial investment, you'll have the professional tools to make sure the job gets done right. In addition to your cutters, or grinding stones, you'll need some Dichem or Prussian blue, some fine lapping compound, and a lapping tool. Using cutting oil, make a light cut with a 45-degree cutter or stone. If you have the new way cutter, use the 46-degree cutter. So far, the cut looks good, Eddie. But suppose your initial cut was less than 75%. When less than 75% of the circumference is cut, chances are your valve guide isn't positioned properly and will need to be replaced. Or else your cutting tool guide is bent, or the stone isn't properly dressed. If your initial cut is 75% or more of the valve seat circumference, then you should continue cutting until the seat is smooth and complete around the circumference.
Okay. Well, the next thing I need to do is check the contact area, right?
You got it. Apply Prussian blue or magic marker to the valve seat and check the contact area between the seat and valve. The location of the valve seat in relation to the valve face is very important for good sealing. If the contact area is too high on the valve, you'll have to lower the seat by cutting the top with a top cutter. The top angle varies from model to model, so check the shop manual for proper angle of the stone or cutter you'll need. If the contact area is too low, raise the seat by cutting the bottom. Here again, the bottom angle varies, so check the shop manual for the correct angle. Now, recheck the seat width. If the contact area is in the correct location, but the seat is too wide or uneven, use the top cutter and bottom cutter to narrow the seat.
Well, it wasn't too wide, but what if it's too narrow?
If the seat's too narrow, you widen it with the 45 or 46-degree cutter. And Eddie, be sure you check the contact area after each cut, okay?
You bet.
You can also use a grinder tool rather than cutters. Just be sure you use the proper eye protection and follow the manufacturer's instructions. And be sure to dress all 3 stones before each cut. Once you've finished cutting the valve seat, lightly coat each new or cleaned valve face with a fine lapping compound. Water or oil base is fine. Just keep the lapping compound away from the valve guide and valve stem area. Lap each valve and seat. Roll it back and forth between your hands with a slight downward pressure. Then lift and turn the valve, and repeat just enough to remove the tooth left after cutting. This helps ensure a good seal with minimal compression loss. Wash any residual compound off the cylinder head and valves. Then apply a coat of engine oil to each valve face and seat. Now you're ready to reassemble the cylinder head. Be sure to install new valve stem seals. Lubricate the valve stems with moly grease before inserting the valves into the guides, and turn each valve slowly to avoid damaging the stem seals. Remember that the tightly wound coils of the valve springs face in toward the combustion chamber. Adjust the spring compressor attachment so the springs will compress just enough to install the cotters. Then, position them and tap each valve stem gently to firmly seat the keepers. Install the cylinder head according to shop manual directions. Then set valve clearances, paying special attention to cam position. If the model you're working on is equipped with hydraulic valve adjusters, it may have shims, so be sure to check shim selection whenever the valve seats have been refaced. To make sure you've done the job right, start the engine. Then, check for oil and fuel leaks.
Well, that's it, right? I mean, the valve job's complete.
Yeah, Eddie, that's what it takes to do the job right.
It wasn't so tough. As a matter of fact, it wasn't tough at all. All right. I'm back here.
That's right, Eddie, you're back. And now you'll be ready for the next valve job that comes your way.
Hey, look, you know, you're an all right guy. Kind of remind me of myself.
Yeah, Eddie, I think I know what you mean. Listen, before I go, I'd like to go over some of the major points I've explained, just to be certain.
Yeah, sure, go right ahead.
First, before you start a valve job, be sure to rule out other top-end problems. And remember, replace. Don't repair damaged parts. And don't bother refacing valve seats until you're certain the guides are straight. Don't forget, you check centering and cut the valve seat. Then drop or raise it as necessary and adjust the seat width. You lap each valve and seat lightly. You then reassemble and install the cylinder head. Adjust the valves, then check for oil and fuel leaks while the engine is idling.
No sweat. I got it. Listen, thanks. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening. I know you're going to make a lot of customers very happy with the quality of your work at your dealership. See you around.
Yeah, see you around.
Hey, Eddie, got some more sublet work. Can you set it up for me?
Yeah, hang on. Oh, we don't have to send this out. It's just another valve job. I can handle it, no problem.
Submitted for your approval, Mr. Eddie Smith, a capable motorcycle technician who saw a reflection of knowledge and insight he could gain. His good understanding of motorcycle technology just got better, with a little help from himself and Honda's Tech Zone.